Wow, reviewing motivational interviewing. This is the third session of my training module. I reviewed my video, and there were some things that could be advantages and disadvantages. As I went through this session with my client, she informed that everything was a 10, which sometimes is difficult when working with clients because they think everything is okay and everything is going good, but in actuality, it really isn't. And one of the issues that I had with that is that how can I change your behavior if the client already feels like the behavior does not need to be changed? And that's one of the things with motivational interviewing. I don't think that there was any resistance from my client, but I have to look at the reactions that were expected and the uncertainties about the next session that we may be involved in concerning motivational interviewing. And the presence of the client displaying that she did have a problem, but we needed to find ways to adjust this problem and address the concerns of this problem. And when addressing the concerns of the problem, the client seemed to have everything all in place. So I don't know whether it was a conscious state or unconscious state. So that was one of my disadvantages of actually speaking with the client. And the behaviors of the client were normal for a typical 13, 14-year-old. She was inspired by her peer pressure from her peers and different things of that nature, which made it harder for her as a student in the class to display positive behaviors. And her position seemed to be, the questions were answered the way I think that she wanted me to hear them to be answered, which that process also was a disadvantage because I wasn't able to go into details with the probably recognition questions, the concern questions, or any questions about extremes. And I want to understand her intention to change, or her optimism about change, and questions about extremes. Those are some of the things that I wasn't able to address when it came to the client. My advantages were I was able to begin where she was as a client, because she explained that she had those behaviors and that she addressed that she had a problem, and I didn't have to go into detail of why these were a problem for her. Her misbehaving, she was able to break it down to me and help me to understand that this was a problem for her. And she was able to kind of explore and reflect on how she could change, in which that was a good influence for motivational interviewing and changing the behaviors that she had in place. And I was trying to point out some of the values, which she did want to go to school to be a nurse, and some of the goals that she had. Again, the values that she had, that she wanted to do better in school in order to have a better future, in order to be a nurse in the future, which were her goals, which made it prominent when discussing the motivational interviewing change that she had goals already in place from the beginning, which didn't make it too difficult for me to go into her strengths perspective and empowerment, as far as how she felt empowered by wanting to go back to school. And her statements were really kind of trying to explore ways that if she needed to do anything different, she was willing and able to do so by rating herself at a 10. And for the future of her views of how her behavior was, it seemed like she had a plan in place already. And there were no harmful consequences to this behavior. Mainly, it was only suspensions from school, things that, related to her misbehaving in class, including, being retained to the same grade again, which would make it difficult for her to meet those goals if she was being able to be retained to the grade again. So it would make her future harder as far as being a nurse. And handling some of the reflection and thoughts and opinions was hard for me culturally, because I looked at the disadvantage of her being an African American student, female, and having those behaviors in the classroom, and at times being misunderstood due to those behaviors and reactions to other students and peer pressure within the classroom. And I also reflected on any contradictions I may have had to with the client, being that she had those goals and she wanted to continue to focus on those goals. And when she focused on those goals, that made her rely on the change process and change the way she felt about the motivational interviewing. And I wanted to kind of stay really content on making a close relationship with how her journey would be with the change, including motivational interviewing. And in some cases, I wanted to focus on the client, not relying on this as a problem that would continue for her, that it would change. And I wanted to not begin to argue with her or display any negative behavior about her judgment. It was concerning her self-determination, and we must remember as social workers that it's her decision, her judgment, and her self-determination is very important when providing these services. And sometimes we have to look at, are there any influences in her life as far as her parents, anybody that can be that role model for her to become the nurse that she wants to be? Are there any other relatives that may be nurses that can give her the motivation to continue to go on and continue to finish her education, and without any suspensions or without any delays in anything that she's doing? So it will take me some more sessions in order to grasp that idea and get her to clarify, that it's her choice and not mine as the client. She has the choice to decide. And what the costs and what the benefits were, as I said, the pros and cons of the behavior, and supporting, again, her self-determination and self-advocacy for herself, and that she was ready to make the change. And when I went to the scaling technique, it was already assessed that she was ready to make that change. And she did explain that she had the personal strengths and supports in place. And maybe I should have went more into asking her questions in hypothetical situations that would occur for her while in school, or even creating a plan with her on what to do as to what she would do if she was put in the situation again. So it would take determination on ensuring that if she is put in that situation, she'll use the goals that we were planning to put into place. And it was more of giving advice instead of information. And that's what made me understand that, you give advice and suggestions. That's why I suggested. And the reason that I chose motivational interviewing was due to my feelings of comfortable silence that I felt. Like, I don't like silence when I'm in a session. And I chose this because I was ensuring that I would be able to understand the client completely and continue to use reflective listening instead of speaking throughout the session. That would help me out in the future process of sessions and providing therapy services to clients at any given point. And I would like to thank you for looking at my training module, and hope that I provided the information in the future for more motivational interviewing.